improvisational comedian, Chris spent nearly 20 years writing commercials and screenplays, including scripts from the Muppets. Many of you probably know Chris from the New York Times bestsellers, The Island of Dr. Libris. Who's read that? All right. How about Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library? And of course, Mr. Lemoncello's Library, the first one, as well as the co-author of the #1 best-selling series, iFunny, House of Robots, and Treasure Hunters. Who's read some of those books? All right, so we have a lot of readers here. Now he brings us a hilarious illustrated series about all the wacky things that happen when you live in a motel. Chris is going to tell you all about it, so let's please give a warm welcome to Chris Grabenstein.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for coming out, especially on a school night. How many of you guys have read Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library again? Okay, so you'll be happy to know that they are making a movie of Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library for Nickelodeon, and it'll be on Nickelodeon sometime next fall. They were kind of vague about it. And it sounds, it's this kid, Casey Simpson. Anyone here watch Nickelodeon? They watch Ricky, Nicky, Dicky, Dinky, Donkey, Dookie, Dookie. What's the name of the show? They know. Well, Casey's going to play Kyle Keeley, and then an actress that's on Nickelodeon's School of Rock show, Brianna Eady, is going to play the character of Akimi. So that's exciting. So that's cool. But today, we're talking about a brand new series coming up. Welcome to Wonderland, Home Sweet Motel. This is the first book in a series. The second book is already almost printed. It'll be out in May, and there'll be a third book. The second book is called Welcome to Wonderland, Beach Party Surf Monkey. And the third book is called Welcome to Wonderland, Banana Shack Shake Up. So we've got lots of books coming up. And this is a book, when I was a kid, we used to live in Buffalo, New York. You guys know where that is? Buffalo, New York, up near Lake Erie. And every summer, my dad got 2 weeks off, and in August, he would pack me and my 4 brothers and my mom would get into a station wagon that was un-air conditioned in the middle of August and drive for 3 days from Buffalo, New York to St. Petersburg, Florida to go visit my grandparents. And along the way, we'd stop at all these cool roadside attractions. There's one in North Carolina called South of the Border. Have you guys ever been there? With the big statues. And there's another one called Gatorland with the big teeth. And then there's Wiki Waki Springs with mermaids. There was even this crazy drugstore in St. Petersburg, Florida, where they had ducks playing basketball and mermaids you could talk to. And I used to love all those wacky attractions. And then when we got to Florida, we got to stay in a motel. And I've always thought that a motel is the coolest place in the world, especially when I was a kid, because there was a swimming pool, and you could jump up and down on your mattresses a little bit and not get in too much trouble. Somebody came in every day and cleaned up, picked up the towels off the floor, and made the bed, and the cups were wrapped in plastic. There was all the ice cubes you could ever want, and the toilet had been sanitized for your protection. I'm not sure against what, but they were always had a little piece of paper on them saying they'd been sanitized. So that made me start thinking, like, what if I could be a kid and live in a motel? And it would be the wackiest motel ever created by my grandfather, Walt Wilkie, who in 1970 built Walt Wilkie's Wonder World and filled the grounds with this big giant statue of a dinosaur and a statue of a mouse that he got from a cheese shop in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and just all these, and a big Muffler Man statue. But he opened that in 1970, then this other Walt Disney opened Disney World in 1971. So Grandpa in the book tells my hero, P.T. Wilkie, who's our narrator, I had a very good year, P.T., a very good year. And ever since like 1971, the motel struggled to get by and has barely made it. But P.T. Wilkie, who is named after P.T. Barnum, loves living in this motel. And this is the first chapter of the book. And this book is heavily illustrated. Brooke Allen, I don't know if any of you have read the Lumberjanes graphic novel series. You've read those? Well, she did, Brooke Allen, she does the cool illustrations in this book. I'll hold up a picture here. Ooh, this is the first illustration there. So this book's filled with like 70 or 80, I think, different illustrations. Kind of like the iFunny books that I do with James Patterson. So the first chapter is called Gator Tales. Like I told my friends at school, living in a motel is always exciting, especially during an alligator attack. To this day, nobody knows how that giant alligator made it up to the second floor balcony of my family's motel on St. Pete Beach, I told my audience. The cafeteria was so quiet, you could have heard a taco shell snap. Maybe it took the steps. Maybe it just stood up, locked its teeth on a porch railing, and flipped itself up and over in a mighty somersault swoop. The thing was strong, people. Very, very strong. I heard Clara, my favorite housekeeper, scream, "Monstro, Signor Wilkie! Monstro!" "Run," I shouted, because Clara's always been like a second mom to me, and I wanted her to be alive enough to see her daughter graduate from med school. Well, she didn't need me to shout it twice. Clara abandoned her laundry cart while that alligator raced toward the room at the far end of the balcony, and I knew why. The chicken. See, the family in room 233, a mom, a dad, 2 kids and a baby, had just gone upstairs with a whole bucket of the stuff. Heck, I could smell it 20 doors down. The giant alligator, he smelled that secret blend of 11 herbs and spices all the way back at his little lake on the Bayside golf course where, legend has it, he's chopped off a few ball divers' arms. Thinking fast and running faster, I made it to Clara's deserted laundry cart. I grabbed a few rolls of toilet paper and lobbed them like hand grenades. The TP caught the gator on his head just as he was about to jump through the terrified family's door. And we get another picture there of the toilet paper being thrown at an alligator. That's when the giant lizard whipped around. He looked at me with those big bowling ball eyes. Forget the chicken, he wanted me. He roared like smelly thunder and sprinted down the balcony. I just grinned, because the gator was doing exactly what I wanted him to do. While he barreled ahead on stubby legs, I braced my feet on the bumper of the laundry cart. I lashed several towels together to create a long terry cloth lasso. I twirled it over my head. I waited for my moment. When the gator was 5, maybe 6 feet away, I flung out my towel rope, aiming for his wide-open mouth. He clamped down. I tugged back. My lasso locked in a jagged tooth. Hee-yah! I shouted, "Giddy up!" The monster took off. What happened next, you wonder? Well, I rode that laundry cart all the way back to the Crazy Alligators golf course, where I sent the gator scurrying down into its water hazard. "And stay away from our motel," I hollered. And I guess that gator listened, because he's never dared return. And there we got another illustration. And these golfers are watching. One says, "Wow, that boy sure is brave." The other one says, "I hear he saved an entire family." And the third one says, "And their bucket of chicken, too." When I finished, everyone applauded, even Ms. Nagler, the teacher on cafeteria duty. She raised her hand to ask a question. "Yes, ma'am? Well, how'd you and the alligator get down from the 2nd floor?" I winked. "One step at a time, Ms. Nagler. One step at a time." She and everybody else laughed. Yep, everybody at Ponce de Leon Middle School loves a good P.T. Wilkie story. Except, of course, Mr. Frumpkus. He came into the cafeteria just in time to hear my big finish, and like always, he wasn't smiling. The next kid came Mr. Frumpkus. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, a lot of fun. It's a fun series, and as the story progresses, we find out that maybe the motel has a balloon loan that's coming due in 30 days, and PT is going to have to try to raise $100,000 in 30 days to save the family's motel. And good thing there's this girl named Gloria Ortega checks into the motel, and she's a business whiz. They watch the Shark Tank shows all the time, so she knows how to be an entrepreneur. And so together they're going to come up with all sorts of schemes and activities to try to save the motel. And then things get a little even more interesting when some 2 old guys show up who may be some notorious jewel thieves who could have left something behind at the motel several years ago. That's all I'm going to tell you about that. So that's Welcome to Wonderland, and I was going to see if any of you guys had any questions you wanted to ask me about this book, or the Lemoncello books, or anything at all. Yes, sir. Is there going to be a 3rd book in the Mr. Lemoncello's library series? That was the question you were going to ask me. And the answer is yes. And that book's going to be called Mr. Lemoncello's Great Library Race. And Mr. Lemoncello in that book creates a new holographic machine called the Non-Fictionator, which can bring all sorts of famous people to interactive life. And you can talk to Abraham Lincoln, ask him questions. And so there's a big game where some of the players from the previous books come back, and it's sort of like The Amazing Race on television, where they have to leave the library, race each other, and come back with a fact about one of these non-fictional characters. And one of the historic figures is Mr. Lemoncello himself. So when the kids go out into the field, they find a little bit interesting piece of information on the internet that says Mr. Lemoncello stole the idea for his very first game. Are they going to take the first answer they find? Or are they going to dig deeper? I hope they dig deeper. Somebody, yes, over here. They tell me the fall of 2017. Right at the same time as the movie comes out, so it'll be like a Lemoncello fall next year. Yeah. Yes. Is there really a Mr. Lemoncello? No, he's kind of based on me. What? Is there really Olympics in a library? Some libraries do library cart races, and I've seen some pretty impressive library cart drill teams in my day. And they're pretty good. They do like synchronized cart pushing. But I don't know if there's any library Olympics yet. We put together a bunch of Olympic games that schools and libraries are doing sometimes. So you could have one in your own library. Yes? I kind of knew I wanted to be a writer since like 5th grade when I was no good at anything else. My father wanted me to be a jock, to play football, baseball, basketball, something with a ball in it. And we used to play kickball at recess, and I was so bad that they could roll the ball at my foot and I would strike out swinging 3 times in a row. So I realized that I'm not going to be cool doing sports, but I started writing skits, and I just do little comic books where I would draw pictures and pass them around to all my friends, and they would start laughing. Do you do that? That's like a way a lot of kids get started, like do little comic books. Mine were called Super Duper Man. I don't think they were based on any well-known comic book at all. And I would pass them around, and then I would write skits for my friends to act in. And then in 7th grade, I had an English teacher who I used to write kind of funny essays, and she wrote in the margins of my paper, "You will make your living as a writer someday." And when a teacher tells you something, well, if my parents had said something like, "You're my mother and father who get paid to say nice things about me," but when a teacher tells you something, ooh, that's true. So that's kind of when I got started. 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Wow, that was like 10 years ago, too. Who else has a question? Yes?
How closely do you work with the illustrator?
A book like this, they kind of keep a distance between the illustrator and the author, and the art directors at the publishing house work. So when I write this kind of book, I'll write like a narrative, a description, and I might write the jokes, like the little captions in this particular one. I think I wrote all those out, and then she comes and adds even more to it. So it's probably better that way. That it's like you have 2 people working together, I guess. I don't know. Yes. Is there going to be another Island of Dr. Liebers? I'm not sure about that one. I have already planned out a second Island of Dr. Liebers, but they want me to do 4 of these books like right away, and another Lemoncello, and my wife and I are going to write a book together pretty soon, and so we might do another Island of Dr. Liebers. But what I did do is with a buddy of mine, because I did a lot of acting in college, and I got one of my actor friends from college, and I would turn the Island of Dr. Liebers into a stage play. And we're going to try it out in Tennessee next year, because that's where we went to college, and they're going to do it at a children's theater there, and if it's any good, then you guys can do the Island of Dr. Liebers. Yes? Another treasure hunters. Those just keep coming. We just finished the 5th one, and I talked to James Patterson the other day. He wants to do a 6th one. So the 5th one will probably be out sometime next year, and there'll be another House of Robots, I think, in January, and another iFunny in February, and then we have a new book in December called Word of Mouse. That's going to be really cool. And then we did another one called Potty Mouth and Stupid. I don't know when that one's coming out. And that's coming out sometime next year. And then we did another one called Laugh Out Loud. And then I think I went to sleep. Yes?
How many hours a day do you write?
I try to write 2,000 new words a day. So, and I start the day going over the 2,000 words I wrote the day before, just to get back into the story, do a little light editing. And so if I'm writing like whiz-bang action sequence like in the Treasure Hunters, or if it's a fun scene in Mr. Lemoncello where all sorts of zaniness is going on, I can do 2,000 words in like 4 hours. But if it's like, I'm just getting started, I don't know who these characters are, what's the world, that might take like 6 or 8 hours. So it's not so much time as words. So I found after 2,000 words, I start getting sloppy. It's just like, it starts making no sense at all. Yes?
How many projects are you
Usually every month I do I do one James Patterson and Chris Grabenstein and one just by myself. So I can write like the first draft of the book, and both of those, like in 4 months I'll have 2 first drafts of 2 books. And then, but I don't work on them at the same time, like the treasure piece over here in Mr. Limoncello. So like I have to dedicate time, take a little day off to chill out the brain in between, and then do the next stuff. And then you have edits for the books that pop up and things like that. Yes, it's crazy, but it's fun. I guess it goes back, I worked in advertising for almost 20 years, and I really liked the pace of that, where one day you were working on, say, a beer commercial, the next day you're working on life insurance, the next day you're working on hamburgers, the next you're working on Hallmark cards and trying to make people cry. And so it was kind of fun to have all those different styles that you could play. No questions? No. Well, thank you. Oh, yes, there's one. I don't know if there'll be a movie about the treasure hunters, but those would be pretty expensive movies because there's all sorts of shipwrecks and diving, and just the production on that would be crazy. Like James Patterson told me that they've been trying to make a movie out of his Maximum Ride books for years, but to get those kids flying and all the special effects, that can really just production-wise be turned into a $200 million movie, and that might just prohibit it. But maybe Treasure, he told me it's someone his option the robots book, so maybe Treasure Hunt's going to become like an animated thing or something. I don't know, maybe. Yes?
My son wants to know, did you base Charles Chiltington on anything?
Charles Chiltington is based on every snob I have ever met in my life. And when I live in New York, we call it Connecticut lockjaw, because it's impolite to open your mouth too wide if you've been properly raised. So Charles Chiltington, and I got the name for Charles Chiltington. This is probably terrible to say up in Massachusetts, but whenever I need a snobby character, I go to the list of passengers who are on the original Mayflower. I go down the list and I either pluck a name off or I'm like, Chiltington. He sounds like he could be on the Mayflower. Charles Chiltington. But in the movie, I think Charles gets to redeem himself. Though in the Limoncello books, he comes back in the second book, of course, and he brings his mother, who's even worse. And kids love hating Charles Chiltington. I get all sorts of emails from kids how much they hate him. Because he's a little bit based. Some of the adults might remember there was a character on a TV show called Eddie Haskell that was on Leave Her to Beaver years and years ago. And I said, well, kids have never met an Eddie Haskell yet. And Eddie Haskell is a character who's really nice to adults. Like, good morning, Mrs. Cleaver. Your blouse looks very attractive today. But the minute the adult's out of the room, it's like, hey, your mother looks like crap today. So it was that kind of character. So that's where Charles came from. Do you remember when the very first scene with Charles Chiltington? Where was Charles Chiltington? Anyone remember when the very first time we see him in Escape from Mr. Limoncello's library? Where was he?
He was inside his library.
He was in his family's private library at home. So when you write a story, you want to have a protagonist who stands for something and an antagonist who almost stands for the opposite. So Kyle's all about teamwork, and Mr. Limoncello is all about libraries are for people. It's the democratization of knowledge. Anybody who wants it can come get it. Charles is all about knowledge is power. We have a private library. We own all the information. Ooh. So that's what's going on here. These are good questions. Anyone else? Yes? Is there going to be a movie of The Island of Dr. Leibus? I'm not sure yet. That sounds like you liked that book. Did you like The Island of Dr. Leibus? I want you to write to Random House, 1500 Walkway, and say, do another book. Yes?
So about the history of the library and movie, so like all the books
It's just the first book, but being a movie, they are, I'm sure, are going to take, I have not yet read the whole script, so I think they're taking some major artistic license. I mean, they're changing things. So you think about it, a movie has to be very visual, and a book can work in your brain, like in Escape from Mr. Limoncello's library. One of the cool things is the library cards. You turn them over, there's clues on the back, and you decipher them. Now think of that in a movie. It's like for 10 minutes of the movie, they're showing you the back of a library card. That would be kind of boring. So what they've done is I think they've taken the overall premise. The kids are going to come in. Mr. Limoncello has this wacky library. They got to find their way out. But from what I could see, that instead of going into Dewey Decimal Doors, they're going to open up like a big door that has the cover to Charlotte's Web on it. And when they open that door, they step into a holographic world that is the whole world of Charlotte's Web with Wilbur the pig and stuff. And that's where the clues and puzzles will be solved inside those books. And it's almost as if they took Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library and combined it with the Island of Dr. Libris, because some of those characters are maybe escaped from their rooms, from what I was saying. Yes?
How does the wonder go hand in hand?
I'm not sure that they showed me where it was going to be. I'm not sure it's going to be as big or not. I do know they made 70,000 fake books for the library out of styrofoam, and they spent 3 months building this huge. It's probably twice as big as this room we're in now, and 3 times as tall. This set of this really cool library with gargoyles, and there's like 4 or 5 statues of Mr. Lemoncello, and I'm getting one of the gargoyles. Yes.
When Charles Chillington, when he calls like his relative at the Library of Congress, this is like really tiny, but it's his like relative going to actually standing in the Library of Congress to receive the video call.
Oh, I don't know. In the movie, I haven't seen the script. So I don't think so. I think by the end of the movie, they're going to make Charles Chiltington one of the good kids. So I don't think he's going to be even cheating at the end.
Oh, that's
Well, sometimes they do that in movies, and we regret it. Yes?
What was the first published book that you wrote?
The first published book I wrote for kids was called The Crossroads. I had written like 8 or 12 books for adults before that, but The Crossroads was a ghost story for Halloween.
And we have that downstairs.
Yeah, it's a pretty spooky book. So it's all about a tree that's haunted by the ghost of the person who crashed into it and died. And the boy moves into the house, and that tree's in his backyard. And he gets creepy things are happening around that tree. Then one night, lightning strikes that tree splits open, and out comes this spirit. Try to sleep tonight now.
so you didn't have much to do with the screenplay or anything.
No, at my level, you don't get much input. You got. No, I didn't have much input, but I'm told that they knew that the book was very popular, so they're going to try to keep pretty close to it. So we'll see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun. I got the actors were great. It looked like great production value, so I think it's going to be a good film. Yes. Mr. Lemoncello is being played by a sort of classically trained British actor who lives in Canada, who's named Russell Rock. I don't claim to fame, he has some small parts in the Twilight. But it really looked, and it's interesting, when I wrote that book, what I do sometimes, I get pictures. Well, this has been fun for me. Are there any last questions burning on your mind? All right, so we'll do the signing thing. This is fun.
Okay, can you tell? He must have been an amazing comedian. What we're going to start with, the first 2 rows are going to line up along.